all I was going to ask you is to flesh out what you think happened on October 7th, because when I went and spoke to protesters, there was a whole range of opinions. Some people said it never happened. Some people said it's
No. Of course they happened. No.
And then you were saying some details didn't happen. So
I can tell you.
How many people do you think were killed?
Welcome back to Z's Political Couch, everybody, where we kick back, relax, and dissect the world's biggest debates with a sharp wit of late-night talk shows and a cozy vibe of Sunday afternoon nap. Today, we're finishing off the final installment of our series with Bassem Youssef and Konstantin from Trigonometry on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a topic so layered, even this couch feels the weight. Join us as Bassem Youssef insightfully and thoughtfully drops truth bombs, analysis, and political drama. If you missed the first couple episodes, worry not, I'll link it at the end of this video. So settle in, get comfy, and let's unravel.
To the Israeli reports, the official Israeli reports, the papers that were submitted even to International Court of Justice, 1,129 Israelis were killed. 1,129.
Okay.
Out of those, 735 were civilians, and the rest were military and police.
Okay.
So 735 civilians. Babies, one baby were killed under the age of 1 year, which is Mela Cohen, 10-month-old, no decapitation. A total of 49 children that were killed under the age of 19, 49, not 40 decapitated babies. There was no gang rape. There was, of course, there might be like a sexual violence, but like the whole idea about systemic, that did not happen, again, according to the Israeli papers that were submitted to the international court. So now we have the truth. 735 civilians. I don't know, 170, 200, I don't know how many people were kidnapped. Now, if you look at these numbers now, does this justify 30,000 people killed? No. But you created like this shock value at the beginning. Rape people, decapitated babies, cutting babies out of their wombs. That didn't happen.
Okay. Well, I'm relieved it didn't happen because it sounded...
And again, that doesn't mean that what happened is good.
No,
and that doesn't mean that what happened is acceptable.
I don't
but
think
what I'm saying that when you go with the people with an outrageous story,
no, of
you
course.
you are priming people to accept what will happen next.
Interesting. Let me just ask one point on this, because you mentioned earlier, what would happen if London was invaded by a foreign country? What would happen if London was invaded by the Irish? The Irish have reasons to be angry with England, right? And they had murdered 749, did you say, innocent civilians, and didn't decapitate but killed a baby. If you say people with their back against the wall are going to react, then how are people going to react in that situation?
By the way, my example that I said about London,
right?
What if like a foreign country come in and this immediate country, I would be here, London or England are actually the position of the Palestinians. What I'm saying is, if you come in and you have your whole country like invaded and your whole military is decimated and you have nothing, you will have resistance forces that will be radicalized.
I understand.
So that was my use.
But
your use is that like if London was attacked now and London's still powerful and can retaliate, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, if during the IRA and the Troubles in Ireland, where we did have terrorism in this country, they had launched an invasion into northern England and slaughtered 750, but actually it would have to be, what's the population of Israel? About 10 million, so it would have to be 6 times that. So they slaughtered over 3,000 people, 3,500 people, innocent people, didn't decapitate them. Let's say there was no gang rape. How do you think England would react?
Oh, I don't know. But the thing is, using these arguments, I think it's a distraction to what's happening right now. Because basically what we're saying, I think these are all ways to distract the conversation about like, let's talk about what England would say and let's forget the killing that's happening on daily basis.
No, it's precisely because I care about the killing of innocent people now that I think we have a responsibility to try and think about how these intertwined and intertangled mutual claims of violence and whatever get untangled. That's what I'm saying, right? So I think that the reality of why we're having this argument is I'm interested in trying to find out how this gets sorted out.
But I will answer your question about what if the RA or whatever, England comes in and kills 3,000 people, all right? You're missing something. Did actually England do to Ireland what Israelis did to Palestinians for 75 years? For 75 years.
Worse.
I would bet my life
You should speak to some Irish people.
that England did not for 75 years kill 100,000 Irish people.
You should speak to some Irish people.
In the 20th century, did he kill 100,000 people in the 20th century?
Probably not, but that doesn't mean that the Irish people didn't have very strong reasons to feel.
Absolutely.
Some people felt that their terrorism was justified. Of course, there'll be lots of people that disagree. Anyway, I guess the question in terms of moving forward, like how do you move forward, is what would you like? So let's say, again, for the sake of argument, Israel stops bombing, pulls out. What would you like to see happen from there? Because you talked about the plight of the people in Gaza and in the West Bank. Let's say that all of that ends, and you talked about land. And this is one of the things I always find interesting, because obviously this is where there's such a big conflict because two peoples are making a claim to the same land. What should happen in terms of, like, when you say give back the land, which bit of land?
Well, first of all, if the war stops today, the first thing we do we need to have Israeli officials being, arrested and put to be tried for their war crimes.
Okay, let's say that happens.
Okay, and then let's talk about the bigger picture.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the bigger picture. Like, what in your opinion, what's the origin of the conflict? Why is it a problem?
This is why I said at the beginning, I'm asking questions from the point of view of an uninformed person, because I'm uninformed.
Okay.
So you're going to have to tell us what you think is the solution.
Well, a short-term...
For example, on Ukraine, I think I know about it. I'm from the area. It's something I've spoken to a lot of very well knowledgeable people about. I've read lots of books about it. I can tell you what the solution is for Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. And I said it on day one of the conflict. I said how it would end, which is probably how it will end, right?
So what happened if Ukrainian refugees fled from Ukraine, came in here and claimed 20% of the land of England? Would you give it to them?
Probably not.
No.
That's exactly what happened after the Holocaust. You have people coming from Europe, coming to Palestine.
So how does this get solved now?
To get solved, we need to talk about the origin. You have people coming in. 1947, there was the partition. Of course, the Palestinians are like, why are we giving 55% of our land to 30% of the people that 20 years ago, they were not even in that country? So of course they said no. So Israel said like, well, no, we're keeping it. So they had the war. And of course, Israel won. And now Israel's like, well, you lost it. You don't have any claim for it now. And then after 1948, Israel took 78% of the land, leaving only 22% for the Palestinians. With 1967, all of that was gone. And now Israel comes like, well, we gave you these deals and you didn't say it, but it was already a horrible deal. So you cannot really negotiate. You cannot tell me like,
let's accept all
no,
of
I'm
this.
just telling you, like, those Ukrainians who wanted 20%, you didn't want to give them, they ended up taking 70% of England. And it's like, well, we told you we want only 20, now we're going to take 70. They're like, no, but I cannot accept it. So the whole idea about land, you have people, and now it's become, and I have to be, I cannot really like kick out like 9 million Israelis who've been there.
But that's why I'm asking.
It's already there.
Yeah.
It's already there. But at a certain point, the Palestinian Authority accepted 22%, which is the Oslo Accord. And even that was sabotaged by Israel. So you are basically in a position where the Palestinians have to, they are pushed into accepting really bad deals time after time after time after time again. And even that deals are not even honored by the Israelis, because they, on paper, the Israelis should not take the West Bank. And yet the West Bank is being disseminated into little Gazas. They are being disseminated by the illegal settlements that has been deemed illegal by everybody, including the British government, including the American government, and yet the Israelis are doing it anyways. So basically, you are put in a position where whatever solution we can come up with, it's not going to happen.
Well, what you would like to do is go to the settlement that was agreed in Oslo Accords.
I mean, that's a starting point.
And
At
what
least
was
you start from there.
what did Israel and Gaza and the West Bank look like under those agreements?
Well, under those agreements, I guess, I'm not an expert, like the whole of Gaza, and they're going to be like a land swap from inside Israel. And then the West Bank there was like, even on the table, there was like, the Palestinians will take 90% of the present West Bank, which is now, that doesn't even exist because the West Bank has been eaten up by all of the settlements. So that was the Oslo Accords. But then you have Netanyahu on record, it was like, oh, well, I could claim any part of the West Bank as a military facility and I can take it. So I have effectively sabotaged the Oslo Accords. So,
but that's what you'd like to go to as a solution.
Again, but that is me, and I'm not a Palestinian, but I say that's at least a starting point. But you have bigger points that I have absolutely no idea how to solve. Like, for example, the right of return. You have to remember.
What do you mean by the right to return
There are
back?
7 million Palestinians outside the land of Palestine that have been pushed and have been refugees all over the place. You have 2.5 million of them in Jordan. You have 500,000 in Lebanon, 500,000 in Syria. You have like all over the place.
Yeah.
Those people, their land is there. And under no circumstances Israel is accepting that those people that come back. And I don't know how to solve it, because Israel, of course, will not accept the return of 7 million Palestinians, and of course, and because that will change the demographic. So I'm telling you, you're asking me about the solution, and I'm telling you, I can come up with whatever solution, but it will not work, because there's Obama in his book, he said the problem of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is that one part is so strong, and the other part have nothing. One part have all of the support of the world, and the other part has nothing. So even in communication, if you have all of this power, why would you give up any of the stuff that you have earned, right? I pose no threat to you. All of my power will not even leave a dent in yours. So why would you give up anything?
Because I would suggest that the reason they would give up something, Bassem, is because it doesn't matter if you're winning a war. You are still a population under war. You are still suffering. You are still under direct threat. No country wants to be at war permanently. So it is in the Israelis' interests, I would argue, to come to some kind of equitable solution. However, do you see what I'm saying?
I know, but like this is the logic.
Yeah.
This is like how normal people talk. There is a book by an Israeli author. I can't remember. He said like I can't remember the book. I'll remember. It said like it's an Israeli author, and he talked about like actually Israeli society know nothing but war. For 75 years war is the only thing that's been winning them land. When they were getting away with stuff that nobody is actually pulling them accountable for. So for them it is winning. It's just going into continuous conflict, and if that has to come at the expense of some people feeling unsafe, so be it. But the fact is, you just like a couple 2 ways, totally unprovoked. Israel bombed the Iranian embassy in Syria. That's an act of war. That's an act of war. They are dragging Iran into it for absolutely no reason.
Bassem lays out the fact. 735 Israeli civilians dead, no decapitated babies, no systematic gang rapes, just cold, hard numbers from Israeli reports. Konstantin seems stuck in a loop of what-if scenarios about London being invaded by the Irish. Really, Konstantin? Bassem's not buying it. He hits you with the reality of 75 years of occupation, making it clear that Palestinians aren't living in a hypothetical world. They're living under siege. Double standard is glaring. Palestinian resistance is branded as terrorism, while Israel's massive retaliation is labeled defensive. Bassem called it out perfectly. You can't justify killing 30,000 plus people with fake shock stories. If Konstantin still doesn't get it, he might need to run back to his drawing board.
They are dragging other people to war as if they are telling people, fight me, fight me, fight me. And I know it sounds ridiculous and sounds crazy, but that's what's happening. Give me another explanation for this.
I guess their explanation would be that Israel backed Hamas into attacking
Iran.
Iran. Interesting slip of the tongue.
So you see, with that logic, American embassies and British embassies all over the world are not safe because they are backing Israel in all that war. You see that? You see how that logic can go into destructive results?
No, but you said give me another explanation.
I know, but the explanation doesn't mean it makes any sense. You understand? I understand where you're coming from, but that explanation is very destructive. It's very worrying. Yeah. Because now you're dragging. So what else? You're gonna go and hit Chinese embassies and Russian embassies. You want to drag people into war. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. And the fact that like you think like, oh, because I want peace for my people, it doesn't seem to work for them. Because look at the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Not a single time that Israel gave up land unless it's because of like they had to lose it for war. 1973, they gave back Sinai because the Egyptians crossed the canal and went into war. The Oslo Accord, it happened because of the Intifada. Then 2006, it disengaged because they were having too many losses in their ranks. The withdrawal from Lebanon because Hezbollah, like it was like too many casualties from the Israelis. Israelis don't understand anything other than the language of power. And they have never given land out of peace and out of the goodness of their heart. So they're always in a continuous conflict, and they're pushing the world into that conflict. And it is just like, it is very disturbing.
But you say the Israelis. It's really important that we also separate the Israelis from the Israeli government, because there's a lot of people in Israel who disagree vehemently with Netanyahu and his actions and his policies.
This is a very interesting point, because when you say this, why don't I hear that distinction when we talk about Gaza? No. I'm not talking about you.
Yeah,
but
I'm
Bassem, you gotta talk to us.
I'm not
Come
talking
on.
about you, because this is very interesting. Because when you talk
We
about
make
Gaza,
the same
it's like,
distinction.
oh, because
No,
they have elected
no,
Hamas.
Bassem,
I'm
we
not
make
talking
the
about
same
you.
distinction.
I'm not. Again, I'm for the viewers. I'm making this.
Even
kind of
though
thing.
the majority of Palestinians support Hamas, there's still a massive difference between Palestinians and Hamas.
And
Yeah.
even though the massive, like the massive majority in Israel, actually, they have Israelis preventing aid trucks from going into Gaza, and they're like happy about it. You have Israelis in TikTok making fun of Palestinians killing. You have Palestinians like in the Flag Day openly telling Palestinians that they're going to be killed. So whatever, okay, the Israeli government. So the Israeli government has been pushing for the war.
I think this is an important point, Bassem, and I'll explain why. There's people on the other side of the argument who would say pro-Palestine supporters, and I've had arguments with them. Oh, they're pro-Hamas. You know, they're Islamic fundamentalists. Look at them. You see these clips of people chanting for jihad and whatever else, and I go, that is a very, very small percentage of the people. I think what's really important to detoxify the conversation, Bassem, is to say there are governments who are acting in this particular way. There are supporters of those governments, but that doesn't mean that necessarily all of the people in that area support the governments or those actions.
Who has the power?
The government, of course.
I mean, all of these Palestinians and chanting, no matter how bad is the chanting, which I don't agree with,
Of course.
they're
of
just
course.
like people in the street chanting, waving
Yeah.
flags.
Yeah.
None of them has weapons. None of them goes in with like a military arsenal that is supported by the biggest military arsenal in the world, and they go in.
Yeah.
So the comparison doesn't make sense, right? The comparison between like someone who has all of the power, all of the arms, all of the weapons, and we're just people like shouting in the street or like writing comments on Facebook. So that's one thing. But anyways, I will go with you. The Israeli governments all throughout their years have always chosen force, have always chosen military conflict, and they are not interested in peace. As a matter of fact, they're talking openly about the end of days, which is something I want to talk about, which is something that actually bothers me. I live in the United States now, and there is like a documentary on the internet called Praying for Armageddon. It is the most disturbing documentary I've ever seen. It's done by a Norwegian director, and it's on YouTube right now. And they're talking about like how in the American government, you have politicians, senators, and Congress people talking about openly about the end of days, about the rapture, about the second coming of Jesus. And on the other side, you have the Israelis flying in 5 perfect red heifers, red cows, because on the 10th of April, they're going to sacrifice one of their cows, because that is actually going to be the signifying the building of the third temple. And you know what that means? Like a whole, if they're gonna like demolish the Al-Aqsa Mosque and build the third temple, that's gonna be like very detrimental to the world. Now you have people asking for the second.
Can I just stop you, because I didn't understand what you said there about the third temple? Could you just explain that?
So the Israelis believe that there's the third temple should be built, because there was 2 temples that were destroyed, one by the Babylons and one by the Romans. And now this is basically the third temple, and they claim that the third temple is under the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the Mosque of the Rock, or the Dome of the Rock, which is a holy site for the Muslims.
Okay, and where is this place?
In Jerusalem.
Oh, this is in Jerusalem, the holy
Eastern
city.
Jerusalem.
Right, okay.
So basically, they claim that they need to demolish the mosque and build the third temple. And they have been in search for the red heifers, which is perfect cows, red cows. I'm not making this up. You can look it up. There's something called the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, and supported by the government. And they have flown 5 perfect cows from Texas a year and a half ago for $500,000. And now they are preparing them to being sacrificed when they turn 3 years old in the 10th of April. Like, you can look it up, it's there on the internet. And they are going, when that happens, they're gonna burn it, have the ashes, put it in the water, and whoever take a bath with this water is a purified Jew, and they can build now the third temple. Now, why am I saying all of this? Because on the other side, you have people, someone like John Hagee, who is the founder of Christian United for Israel. each year they have $7 billion annual budget to affect politicians in Congress in order to support Israel. And John Hagee has paid $80 million for Israel, not of course his money, that's his money for his congregation. And all of that, they are talking about the second coming of Jesus, the rapture, the Armageddon. And it is crazy because the Christians think that when the second coming of Jesus comes, all of the Jews will either be killed or converted. And the Jews believe when the Messiah comes, everybody will be enslaved by the Jews. And all of them is going for the Armageddon and the end of days. And you know why is this so scary? Because me as a Muslim, I've been always told that my religion is violent. You're talking about end of days. You're talking about jihadists. You're talking about all of these crazy stuff. And now the modern world, the Western world, is led by a superpower whose politicians believe in all of these biblical revelations of the end of days, and it is scary. Everyone should be worried about that. And I know that sounds like a conspiracy theorist, but I'm not. These are like people in government talk openly about this. And you have now that they have all of this preparation of what's happening in I don't know, what, a week from now. And people are talking actively about like pushing the water over the brink for an end of days war, and it's very scary.
But it's not going to happen. I mean, by the time this interview goes out, April 10th would have come and gone, and we're still going to be here.
April 10th is not going to be the end. It is going to be the beginning of events that have been talking about openly everywhere. And I know that I sound like a conspiracy theorist right now, but you have to watch these documentaries and you have to watch these politicians talking openly about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something to be taken lightly or be making fun of, because if you have people talking about openly, like, okay, remember when we were criticized ISIS and Qaeda, how they're bringing a religious scripture into politics?
Yeah, the theocracies, yeah.
And you have now Netanyahu talking openly about the Amalek, and talking openly about the Amalek is the people that were there before in the biblical, and they have all of the right to kill their children, their wives, everybody from the Amalek. It's fine, they're justified. And when you use that in a political context, that is scary. It's like having the president of Egypt or the king of Saudi Arabia or the king of Jordan talking ISIS rhetoric. That's going to be scary, correct? But now you have the leaders in Israel talking openly about this scary rhetoric, and nobody is flinching. Nobody is talking about anything. Nobody is telling this is dangerous. You understand what I mean?
Well, I find this a very depressing conversation because it just makes me think that, I know you disagree, but it just makes me feel that this is really unsolvable because, you know, I talk to people in Israel or people who've been to Israel recently. There's no appetite for a two-state solution with people who used to be for a two-state solution. Mm-hmm. And in Gaza, I imagine there's no appetite for a two-state solution either, right? And Hamas have said they'll do October 7th again. So it just feels to me like it's just going to go on and it's going to get worse.
I know, but like you always have to think about who has the power. The one who has the power, one who have all the solution, or the one who has the way out of it. You cannot just
power is a difficult thing in the modern world because also I feel like Israel is losing the PR war. It's winning the war on the ground. Well, I'm sure you think that, but what I'm saying is what you mean by power will change depending on the circumstances. So Israel has the military power to dominate that situation. But if the entire world pulls back its support for Israel, it will no longer have the power. And so that's kind of, I think, where we are. It's very difficult to tell ultimately how this is going to go. But what I sense is, certainly from this conversation, is there's not a solution in sight.
Israel possesses more than military power. Military power is just a byproduct of the real power that they have. And I'm also talking now as an American citizen. I'm someone who, like many Americans who, have to deal with taxes, the IRS. We have to pay our taxes. And when we see hundreds of millions of dollars that go out every year to Israel, tax exempt, through charity works to help to build the illegal settlements that we just talked about. Yeah. There's $200 million that from tax exempt money that went. That is power. When you have Christian Zionists in American government talking openly about supporting Israel, that is power. And when most of those people are having very questionable motives, you actually should worry about the Jews more than anything. Because many of those people who support Israel, they hate the Jews. They are openly anti-Semitic, but they support Israel. You see that it's an oxymoron, correct? Yes. It's very weird. right? Like, for example, Robert Spencer, he is the founder of Alt-Right in America. His people went in Jacksonville and said, like, Jews will not replace us. And yet he is applauding Israel for the ethnic cleansing they're doing in Israel. And he said, like, Europe should do the same. When you have someone like Elise Stefanik, who's a congresswoman or a senator or whatever, she was very famous for grilling all of the Ivy League presidents about anti-Semitism, and yet she openly supports Eric Palladino, who said openly that Hitler is the kind of leader that we need nowadays. What you see the hypocrisy? Most of those people who talk about like supporting Israel, they are anti-Semitic. It is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And the fact, basically, you've seen people who are pushing for like a military force in because that serves their what they think about what the end of days will be, about like the second coming of Jesus. We need to support Israel, but they don't care about the Jews. You see how we are being ruled and pushed by crazy people in power. It's more, when I say people in power, it's not about military force. It's much more than this. It's when you have something called the Friends of the IDF. This is the biggest charity organization. This is in America. Each year, they raise somewhere between $60 and $100 million for veterans of the IDF. These are American people, American artists, American actors. I wonder how much money is being given to American veterans. This is the kind of support that is, so the power is not really military. The military is a byproduct of all of that.
But I would say, Bassem, that these fundraising efforts are going to become more and more difficult the more that people see the suffering, the casualties, the misery that is created, because it becomes harder and harder to justify.
May I disagree with you?
Well, absolutely, a lot of people do.
The last 6 months, it has been the highest donation that's ever been made by these operations working inside of America for Israel. Each year it's been doing like 50 to 60 million. The IDF this year like raised $100 million. Because they work on fear, because they don't speak to me and you, they speak about the people who are concerned about that part of the place, and they are actually believe that there is an existential threat, so they raise more money. Zaka, which is a rescue group from Israel, these are the group that behind all of the decapitated babies, they raised $50 million out of fear-mongering. So now they are raising more and more and more money. So as an American, as someone who belongs to that country, I'm concerned about that kind of money. I'll give you an example of like how power is not just military. You have AIPAC. Before 2021, they didn't involve in really paying people running for office. They just worked with already elected officials. After 2021, they have bragging about pushing people into American politics. You have bragging about like the 40 Democrats winning in their primaries. They are actually punishing people who don't support Israel by pushing. They have put $4 million in for the opponent of Andy Levin, who's a Jew running for a Michigan Congress seat, just because he didn't support Israel, and he's a Jew. So this whole power is much more than military. It is the kind of support that they have no matter whatever they do.
All right, Bassem, it's been great. I'm glad we managed to have a more constructive conversation as we went on.
And I'm sorry again for the
you don't need to be sorry. I really appreciate that we were able to work through that. And actually, I think it's good for people to see that I think we all come to things with certain expectations and talking points and what other people are going to say. By the way, you know, when the Ukraine war happened, I found it very personally difficult as well. And I would go into conversations with that kind of attitude as well. And so I understand it and I don't take it personally. I'm glad you were on. I'm very grateful you came on. You're a busy guy. We'll continue the conversation with questions from our supporters on locals. But before we do, we always ask the same question.
What's the one thing we're not talking about that we really should be?
The one thing that we should not be
that we're not talking about, not that we shouldn't be talking about. We're not processing.
We should be asking that.
Yeah, what shouldn't we be?
What shouldn't we be talking about? It's like a free hit. Like what is the world not talking about that it should be?
Or what should we be talking about more that we're not?
Right now?
Yeah.
Ooh. It's always in the bag. I think it's the source of all evil, money in politics. I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest threat of Western democracy. If you go out to I don't know how it is in England. Maybe I feel it more in the United States. But if you go out and you vote for all of those representatives, and then at the end of the day they end up not following you, the person who gave the vote, which is the crux of any Western democracy. But they go after they follow the special interests lobbies, and that shapes their decision. That's a big danger. If I didn't vote for pharmaceutical company over the military industrial
Yeah.
complex, I didn't vote for the NRA, I didn't vote for APAC, I didn't vote for those people. But yet my representatives is actually creating legislation that serve those people, not the voter. That is the biggest thing that we should be talking about every single day, because if that is the promise of the Western world to the rest of the world, which is democracy, this has been undermined by the money that is being corrupting this kind of election operation, whatever it is.
So in the end, folks, it's simple. Power isn't just military might. It's the stories they tell and the chaos they control and justify. Israel's not alone in this, though. Many powers thrive of the same playbook. And sure, the media loves to spin things in their favor, but can we see through it all? Double standards everywhere. Civilians being blamed for government's dirty work. And the world just nodding along. It's time to stop pretending this is about defense and start talking about what's really at stake. The lives, the truths, and the futures being gambled on. If you think this is going to end with just another apology or peace agreement that goes nowhere, well, you're in for a shock. As always, it's been a ride. Stay tuned, stay woke, and let's keep pushing for the conversations that matter. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and let's keep this going. Peace, love, and as Bassem always says, don't let them fool you.